Hello, good morning. We are live. For those of you just joining, my name is Ify, the marriage green card lawyer. I'm excited to have all of you guys with me here. Today, I'm going to give you a few more minutes for more people to join us so that we can talk about our very interesting topic. It's been coming up a lot, surprisingly, in our Facebook group. So we are going to address those questions today. All right. You can definitely give us a call and we can help you with your immigration questions. As you can see, we're getting all these calls even right now, but that's why we encourage you to book a consultation so that you don't call us during the live. But nonetheless, call us, leave a message. We'll get back to you ASAP. All right, so a few more minutes for those of you who are just joining. Let me know in the comments where you're joining from. And as usual, while we keep going on about this topic, feel free to ask your questions and we will get to all your questions somewhere in the middle towards the end. So stick with us, okay? All righty. Let me get our TikTok folks on this live as well, because this is a very frequently asked topic that I know we're all going to benefit from. So I'm going to get into it in a little bit. The topic is, can I file a VAWA green card when my current green card is pending? That's the question. So I'm going to give you some answers today while we're waiting. All right. And let me know where you're joining in from, guys, on TikTok as well. I'm in North Carolina, and I help clients all over the USA. So it doesn't matter where you're located. We can definitely help you file your marriage-based green card. And based on today's topic, sometimes marriages go south, right? It doesn't always go as planned. So that's why we're here. What happens when things aren't going as planned but you already filed your green card? What do you do now? What are your options? So, Mauricio, thank you for your question. I'm going to speak a little bit more about this topic, and now we'll get into answering questions. So thank you very much for participating and engaging in the comments. I'm checking out the comments to see where you guys are watching from. So if you're watching me right now, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. You're very welcome. All right. Okay, I believe we have waited for about 5 minutes for everyone to join. So I'm just going to go ahead with the topic. And guys on TikTok, I'll also get to your questions. I see a lot more questions coming in. We'll get to it once we start this topic, okay? All right. So first things first, before I break it down on what to do when your green card is pending and your marriage is falling apart, and if you can still qualify for VAWA, I'm going to quickly explain what VAWA is. All right. We need to know, first of all, what is VAWA? Why is that even an option? Why are we always talking about VAWA? And, given it as an option, really. So what is VAWA? For those of you who are just hearing this for the first time, a VAWA, first of all, protects men and women. All right. It is a rule in immigration that covers any immigrant who has experienced any form of abuse. Any form of abuse being the key word, because some people have come to me and they said, I know something is going on in the marriage, but I don't have any proof, maybe because they haven't called the police or anything like that. So any form of abuse by the US citizen qualifies you to file a VAWA petition. Okay, so that's essentially the simple form of what VAWA is. It is just a rule that protects victims of abuse, right? If you're in a relationship, not just marriage, even child parent, parent child, those types of dynamics. If you are filing a family based green card and your family member, who's your petitioner, starts to show you some form of abuse, verbal abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse. Those are the common ones. Financial abuse is very subtle because usually immigrants feel, they have to be grateful that someone filed for them, and so the person ends up, treating you some type of way and using up your money, and you don't say anything. So that happens all the time. But if you're finding yourself in that type of situation, you qualify for VAWA. So that's that. Okay, VAWA is available for victims of abuse. Okay. So now the question now comes in. So what if my family member already filed the green card and it's pending? How, what do I do now? Because the immigrant feels trapped. It's like, I have to stay in this marriage, or I have to continue to deal with this person because they already filed for me. So what will I do now? Like, if I leave, they'll just call immigration and cancel it, because that's sometimes the types of threats you'll see from the U.S. citizen saying, "I'm going to cancel your immigration. I'm not going for your interview," and then you're like, "Well, what do I do if this person doesn't come for my interview, or they call USCIS and they cancel my immigration? What do I do?" So in that situation, you already know that you qualify for a VAWA petition because you're in a bona fide relationship, because you already filed your green card, and now your petitioner is now changing up on you and pretty much trying to guilt trip you about things, just guilt trip you about wanting this green card in the first place. I hear the argument all the time, like, "Oh, all you want is a green card, you don't really love me," and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, they filed for you, they promised you all these things, and as the immigrant, you're always at a disadvantage because you don't have, like, you're not a US citizen, so you don't have the freedoms that a US citizen or resident has. So that's already a disadvantage. So after dragging you along that path, and then towards the end is like this random change in behavior, or uh, pretty much cooperation. Because another way that your US citizen spouse will be abusive is they'll start the process and maybe refuse to provide documentation. So they're just dragging. That's just emotional abuse, right? Because it's promising you things, not going along with it. And it's just like a whole gaslighting situation. And you're just confused for years. I've seen it happen for so many years with people, and they end up not realizing they were being abused until it's now too late. 20 years, I'm talking that long. Okay, so there's something like that that happens once you find yourself in that type of situation where, okay, either my spouse is not producing the documents, or we have filed, and every other argument we have, every other day, my spouse is like, "I'm going to divorce you," or "I'm going to call immigration to cancel the immigration." That should not be the basis of the fight. Okay, in our Facebook group today, and for those of you who have not joined, you can scan the QR code. You find ways to contact me and join that group. We're having a whole long conversation about, what it takes to actually file a VAWA petition, because the U.S. citizen spouse all of a sudden decides not to attend the interview. So, how do we know that it's abusive? Because some people are on the side of the U.S. citizen saying, "Well, what if the immigrant was the one being abusive," right? And that's happened sometimes. But my answer to that is, if you are a U.S. citizen and an immigrant is suddenly being abusive towards you, your way out of that situation will not be to call immigration or say, "I'm not going for an interview," or trying to do any of those types of things, because talking about or relating your arguments to immigration is manipulative, because you know that the immigrant needs that green card to be able to have their freedom in the USA, to be able to work, travel, just be free. So in essence, you are attacking the person's freedom. So if you are a US citizen and your immigrant spouse is cheating on you, abusive, or whatever the case may be, you have the options to just file divorce, leave the marriage, instead of worrying about the person's immigration status, if that makes sense. You get, so in that dynamic of immigrant versus US citizen, the immigrant always has the lower advantage. Like the US citizen has the upper hand. This is your country, right? So if you start to make any threats, there's most likely some form of emotional abuse. And usually, once this clients talk to me, I can always tell that there is some manipulation going on because they want you to do a certain thing. They want you to give them money or do something. And so they know that the way to push your button is to attack your immigration, like, oh, I'm just not going, so that you can start begging and trying to, all that type of stuff. So that dynamic, once you find yourself in that dynamic, you definitely qualify for to file a VAWA claim. And you can file this VAWA claim at any point before your green card is approved. Okay, because there's a whole different process if your green card is approved. That's another set of people that I think I've discussed that in one of my videos on YouTube. So check out my YouTube channel for tips to help you understand your options and your position as an immigrant in this type of dynamic. Okay, so anytime before your green card is approved, you can go ahead and replace that I-130 petition with your VAWA self-petition and provide proof of your abuse and send it to the VAWA office, and then to deal with attaching your current I-485 to your VAWA petition. That's essentially what you'll be doing. Okay, so, but if you haven't filed at all, you have the opportunity to then file everything together and file your I-485 and your VAWA self-petition, and that will be your option. But once you filed, you could still replace that I-130. You're never stuck, okay? For those of you who may have had an approved green card already, you have a different process, and that's to obviously file the waiver. At that point, you won't be filing a whole VAWA petition. So check out that video to make sure, because some people are often confused. If you are already a permanent resident, even if it's a 2-year green card, you don't need to file a VAWA petition anymore because you already have a green card. You just need to file a waiver when it comes to removal of conditions, and that's a whole different process. You still have to prove abuse and all of that stuff, but it won't be a full petition, all right? See a lot of comments and questions coming in, so I'm going to take a little break to answer these questions, and then I'm going to go ahead and tell you some of the important documents that you need if you're going to be filing a VAWA petition, whether from scratch, from the beginning, maybe you have never filed before but your spouse is abusive, or you have filed, it's pending, you haven't received your work authorization, nothing, and you want to know what to do, okay? All right, so let me look at these comments and give you some answers. Thank you very much for joining. Mauricio, you were the first person to ask a question here. So let's see what you said. You would like to file for VAWA, but you want to know if it will stop you from traveling with your current advanced parole with your I-485 adjustment. That's a wonderful question, Mauricio. This is exactly what I'm talking about, filing for VAWA while your I-485 is pending. So I'm assuming with your I-485, you applied for your work authorization and your travel permit, and you received those things, but yet there's still abuse in your marriage, or you want to replace your I-130 with your VAWA self-petition. So the short answer for you, Mauricio, is that as long as your I-485 has not been denied, your work permit, your travel permit, and everything is still valid. And the best way to ensure that it's not denied, in case your spouse may be called to withdraw the I-130, which they can do, you're not going to force anyone to file a petition for you. So let's get that straight. You're not forcing your spouse, but the point is, if your spouse has willingly started the process for you and it's been a good marriage and there's nothing going on here, and all of a sudden they start changing, treating you like you're some sort of burden or something like that, at that point, that's when you can go ahead and just file a VAWA petition. But if your I-485 is not denied is still in process. Everything you got as a result of that I-45 petition is still valid. Okay. Plus, with a VAWA self-petition, you can always file your I-485, your I-765, and your I-131 for those benefits as well. So you either way, you're going to qualify to be able to travel and do everything. Your VAWA, your new VAWA petition is not going to prevent you from traveling. Okay. Hope that makes sense for you. All right, so I have another question from Samantha. Okay, there it is. Do I need medical proof that you're a victim of abuse? Okay, Samantha, great question. To prove abuse, we're going to get into it in our next point. But to prove abuse, you can use so many different types of evidence. Okay, there's no one required evidence. If the type of abuse you endured was maybe physical or even sexual abuse, because that happens in marriage, and you have proof of that, or maybe you had a miscarriage because you were pushed down some stairs or something, really that affected your health, and you had to see a doctor for that. Definitely provide proof of everything that you went through, why you went to see a doctor, and all that stuff. Okay, so medical proof is not required unless something has happened to you that that allowed you to go to a doctor, all connected to the abuse. Okay, you will need. I think therapy notes would be something that I would recommend, because for therapy, I encourage all my clients who come to me for their VAWA self-petition to see a therapist, just because I know that a lot of the things that you're going through is affecting you mentally. And when you are in a mental state that is not aligned, you're just confused like that, you're not going to be able to pursue any of your goals or just have a free life. And that's just a waste of life. You didn't come here on earth to be someone's footstool, to not pursue your own goals, to not, do the things that you want to do for yourself, for your family. That's not what you came here for. All right. So if you're finding yourself in that type of situation, any proof, text messages, anything that shows your spouse speaking to you in a way that is degrading to you, just anything that causes emotional stress for you, leading you to depression, anxiety, you don't trust yourself anymore. That type of evidence will work. Okay. Isolation. That's one form of abuse that people don't even think about. You end up not having any friends. It's just you and your spouse, and then your spouse still leaves you at home, takes the car. You can't go out, can't talk to your parents. I mean, come on. That type of stuff. You just provide proof. And the best part about VAWA is that your spouse never gets to find out, even if you have your pending green card. And obviously, the USCIS knows your petitioner. They're never going to reach out to the petitioner to confirm whether abuse happened. They have other ways to investigate. Okay, you can't really make these things up. A lot of people think, oh, you're gonna just fake that you're being abused and then claim VAWA. That's not how it works. It's not. You don't fake being abused when there's evidence of emotional stress and you've been evaluated by psychologists to know that you have depression, anxiety related to being in that marriage, related to your immigration status. Because having to file for green card in itself is a high stress situation, because this has to do with your future well-being, whether you can actually thrive in America. Because without the green card, you can't really have many opportunities open for you. So that's a high stress situation. You're always checking, am I going to be approved? Do I have all the documents? That's already high stress. Then to now add somebody making you walk on eggshells and just stressing you out on a daily basis is really not what we're going for. Right? And like I said, immigrants are prime candidates because they don't have any legal claims or rights in the USA. So a US citizen always takes advantage of that. All right. Check out my previous live. Last time I talked about relatives that can help you file your green card. And so relatives as well that help you file can also turn abusive. So once you identify those relatives and realize you may fall into the category, of someone that qualifies for VAWA, go ahead and file. Okay. Let's see. Another question here is from Marcella. Even if I get a divorce, can I still use my work permit? Marcella, it'll only depend on if you are filing a VAWA self-petition to replace your I-130. Because if you file a divorce while your green card is pending and you don't have a VAWA petition filed, you most likely will lose. I mean, your I-45 will get denied because there's no basis for that. Okay, so the reason why you file your VAWA self-petition before going into all of that is because you need to replace that I-130. You need to have a basis for your green card application. You can't just apply for I-485 without either I-130 or I-360. You have to have something. It's either my spouse is filing a petition for me or I'm filing a petition for myself based on this abusive marriage. You understand? So if you don't want to lose your work permit, it's best that you have a plan B. I'm not sure if you're going through an abusive marriage or if you just found a divorce. If it's just a divorce, because not all divorces are from abuse. Like I've seen so many different scenarios. So not every single person will qualify for a VAWA self-petition, or not every single bad marriage will qualify because there are different criteria, right? But if you are filing a divorce because there's been abuse, your next option will be to file a VAWA self-petition. Okay. All right. I'm going to answer one more, and then I'll go back to the last point, and then I'll spend the rest of the time answering all the other questions. For those of you on TikTok, I'm going to get to your questions as well. I see a lot of the questions coming up. Thank you very much for participating and answering one another in the chats. So this question says, if you divorce your spouse while your green card is pending, are you still financially responsible for them afterwards? So I'm guessing you are the U.S. citizen spouse who filed the I-864 affidavit of support for your spouse. Well, that's a great question. Even though it's not related to VAWA, but it's very good to know if you're filing a marriage-based green card because financial sponsorship is a big part of that process. Okay, so if you filed a divorce from your beneficiary, while the green card is pending, the green card hasn't been approved yet, so most likely won't be approved with that I-864 anymore. So probably not. You probably won't be responsible for them. But on the other hand, if your spouse already has a green card and you file a divorce, maybe after they have their 2-year green card or something, you file a divorce then. Simply filing a divorce does not automatically free you from that I-864 responsibility, whatever it is. Okay, you would have to, the beneficiary would have to have worked in the U.S. for a certain amount of time or until they become a U.S. citizen. I think that's when the responsibility goes away. But in all my years of practice, I really have not seen a situation whereby someone was dragged to court or something like that on an I-864. Okay, it's just one of those things that's on there for the record for something to show that if there was anything that was to come up, you have that financial support as an immigrant. Okay, once again, letting us know that immigrants always don't have the upper hand when it comes to these things. We always, you always depend on the U.S. citizen for a lot of things. And so any type of abuse of power is what we're trying to avoid here, okay? These days, you might see some more simplified situations as we're all talking on social media and all of that. But before this rule came into effect, it just came into effect like in the 90s. People used to really, it was on some trafficking stuff, okay? You would have a grown man, bring in this immigrant young girl from a country, maybe perhaps she couldn't speak English or something, and he will just lock her up in his house, and that's it. In her mind, she's like, "Oh, I'm in America, and maybe I have a chance of a better life." But nobody ever sees that he won't let her work, won't let her just have a life, and that's just really, really just unfair. So that's why any form of extreme cruelty, and USCIS is very liberal with defining extreme cruelty. Any form of abuse, I was going to say inconvenience, but it's not just a slight inconvenience. It's more like any form of extreme cruelty towards your immigrant spouse could qualify the person for VAWA. Okay. All right. I'll get back to the questions in a little bit, but yeah, if you find yourself in this situation, if you've been watching from the beginning, you know that we're talking about what to do when your green card is pending, if you can file a VAWA self petition. And for those of you who are just joining and you don't know who I am, I'm Ify, the marriage green card lawyer, and I help clients file their marriage based green card, whether good or bad marriage, okay, without dealing with those complications so that they can find freedom to follow their own dreams, okay? That's what we're doing here. So if you have found yourself in a situation whereby your green card is pending and your spouse has started acting up and you don't know what to do about this whole situation, you feel stuck, you know that you have the option to file your VAWA petition. But so what kind of evidence would you need to do this, right? Because it's one thing to just fill out the form, but you need to also attach supporting evidence to show that abuse actually happened and you qualify for VAWA. So here I've put together just the most important documents I think that you need for VAWA. Now there's about 7 things, 7 categories. And I feel like if you're able to meet these uh, particular types of documents, you should be able to go ahead and prove the others, essentially. Because, for example, one of the most important things you need is proof of bona fide marriage, right? Proof of bona fide marriage would include anything that shows you're living together with your spouse. Perhaps maybe you have a child together, maybe you bought property together, or you have joint accounts, just things that you're doing as a couple. Definitely need that stuff for a VAWA self petition. So you probably already submitted this stuff with your green card before, so you're going to need it again for your VAWA self petition, because it's not only about the one isolated event of abuse. It is the whole thing, right? They want to see your history, like what was the marriage like before the abuse started. Okay, so once you have proof of bona fide marriage and one of them is a lease, that will satisfy proof of residence with your spouse. Okay, this is a very important requirement that a lot of people may not realize, because you won't be able to claim abuse if you haven't lived with your spouse at one point in time in the USA. Okay, so it'll be hard to claim abuse if you are living apart for maybe most of your marriage and you're claiming emotional manipulation or something of that nature. Yes, they could possibly do all that stuff by text and by phone call, long distance relationships. I've seen it, right? But for VAWA, there's that requirement that you should be living with your spouse, or you should have lived with your spouse at some point. Okay, usually once you recognize that there's abuse, people move out and separate and all that, and that won't be held against you. But as long as you live together at some point, that's good. Okay, and then another very important proof that you need is your statement of abuse, your proof of abuse. Okay, the first way to prove abuse is just your own statement, because all these things happen to you. So before you start worrying about the police reports and statements from other people and photographs of bruises that you may not have, because like I said, it's not all about physical abuse. There's different forms of abuse that really does affect your entire well-being and really keeps you stuck. Okay, people have lost their lives over covert abuse that nobody knew anything was happening, and next thing you know, somebody's dead, either killed by the spouse or did it themselves. Okay, so let's not wait for it to get that deep. So as long as you can put in words what has been happening to you from the beginning, maybe you've been keeping a journal, because usually when you're being abused, you start to write down things. Because at this point, you've been gaslit so much that you don't even know what reality is. Sometimes you find yourself recording conversations. I tell people the moment you find yourself recording conversations, it's done. Okay, you're in an abusive relationship because you should be able to feel comfortable with your partner to share things and know that it's a safe space and you don't have to record things to prove later like, oh, this is what you said or this is what was said, this was done. That's already a sign for you. Okay, so if you can write those statements and obviously get proof maybe from your therapist, if you've been seeing a counselor to help you cope and deal with what's going on, well, you would get proof of that. That will help. So basically, proof of bona fide marriage and proof of abuse. Okay, and proof that you currently live in the USA and lived with the abuser at some point. So if you have those things, your green card is pending. Just quietly file your VAWA self petition, let the office that's processing your I-485 know what's going on with you, and from then on, that's it. You should be able to just move on with your life. You don't have to continue to deal with that abusive relationship. And if you need help with doing this, you can contact my office. My phone number is on the screen. You can also scan the code in the video to get more information about this, because my goal is to make sure that as immigrants, we are finding our freedom, we are pursuing our goals, we're living our purpose. Because like I said, there's really no point to be on this earth without realizing what we're here for. And you're just following somebody's child, every day, trying to walk in eggshells to please them. Like, for what? Right? For what? You are worth more than that. You deserve better. You know you deserve better. That's why it's pinching your heart. Okay? That's why it's pinning you, because you know that you could do so much better. All right, your body is always going to tell you and remind you of what you're worth. It's not gonna let you just sit there and take it. Okay, if your heart is pinching you, it's time to get out. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna go into some of the questions that I see, and after that, I think we should be done with today's live. Make sure that you follow me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and join my Facebook group where we're always sharing about stuff like this, supporting one another. If you're applying for your marriage-based green card, you definitely be getting answers to your most asked questions and other resources as well. Okay? All right, so let me see where I stopped here. We have a question from TikTok. How long is VAWA? Well, timeline questions are always very tricky to answer because it really depends on a lot of things. But I know that as of 2022, it's been taken up to 2.5 years. It was 2 years in the past because it is a long process. They have to do some investigation. There's a lot that goes into it. And you may never be called for an interview for your VAWA process. You end up with your 10-year green card. So that whole process does take a while. So, but once you have your travel permit and your work authorization and everything, I believe you should have your piece. And if you're able to submit a good case, get your prima facie decision, just try to move on, keep seeing your therapist, okay? Not just after filing the VAWA, you stop seeing therapy, because you definitely need to heal. You need to heal to elevate, to rise above that thing. Okay, because sometimes the abusers will come back into your life and try to confuse you again. And if you're not strong, if you haven't been working on yourself and really, really stepping into your own worth, you might fall for that stuff again and start from square one. So keep, taking care of yourself and doing what you need to do. And before you know it, it will, you'll have your final decision. Okay. So the cost to file VAWA, Mauricio, first of all, the form has no fee. And as for attorney fees, it just really depends on the attorneys that you're working with. Okay, every attorney has different fees. So I really don't know what fees to tell you, but the form itself doesn't have any fee. Because remember, this is a humanitarian visa. This is to help people who have been abused. Okay, so that particular form in itself is free. You can check out all this information on USCIS website as well. Okay. All right. Any more questions? Let me see. I believe I've answered most of them. If I missed your question, you can feel free to ask it again. And guys on TikTok, thank you very much for all your questions. I believe, let me see what else we got here. Okay, we have one more question for Mauricio, and then I believe we have been through all of them. Hello, Emma. How are you doing? Thank you for joining this live. Okay. I am waiting for my interview, and she doesn't want to go. Can I travel anywhere with the advanced parole? Has been approved for a year. Well, I believe we sort of answered that before. So, like I said, if your I-485 is not denied, your other documents that came with it are still valid as well. Okay. All right. So I believe we've gone through all the questions that we have here on TikTok. We're just kind of chit chatting back and forth. We can come back to answering some of these questions later on. But for today, I believe we have gone through everything that we needed to talk about. So just remember that you can file for VAWA at any point in your green card journey before your green card is approved. Right? Once your green card is approved, you have a different option to still leave an abusive relationship. You're never going to be stuck in an abusive relationship, but the options will be different if you have your green card. But while your green card is pending, or if your spouse never filed for you at all, you have that option to file the I-360, provide proof of your abuse, provide proof of your bona fide marriage and how everything changed into being abusive, and go from there. Okay? All right. Thank you all for joining this live. It was very brief, but I think we learned a lot today. Check out my previous live and other videos on my YouTube channel. Like I said, I share weekly tips to help you prepare for your green card application, to help you feel confident so that you can know your options and go ahead and pursue your own dreams. Okay? Choose yourself first. Choose yourself first in everything. All right? That's the last thing I'm going to say. Thank you again, and I will see you in my next live. It'll be next week. Might be Thursday or Friday, but subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you will get notified once we go live. Okay? Bye.